Hi, everyone. So we are in D2C breakdowns, and today we have Todd Bishop with us. And Todd Bishop is the co founder and VP of Business Development of Dormie Workshop, father, entrepreneur, pro golfer, and avid surfer and skier. He likes to be busy and stay active, needless to say. Hi, Todd. It's great to have you here with us on D2C breakdowns.
How you doing, Alex? Pleasure to be on here with you.
So, Todd, you have a pretty unique story, and I think you have also a pretty unique brand. And we're here on D2C breakdowns. We try to understand the story behind the brand. We try to understand what inspired you to start it, what kind of motivation you had, challenges, problems, but also, of course, successes. Dig a little bit before our call, and I know that you and your brothers were pro golfers, and you started this business together. And tell us a little bit about it, and let's start there.
So, my brothers, we have a very strong family unit, and that extends all the way through, from my uncles and aunts and cousins. And so from that, as our foundation, we always try to do things as a family unit. So I was the oldest of the three boys, and they tended to follow where I would go. And I, you know, have been all over the place, whether it was in the ski industry or the golf industry and in different locations around the world. So they would come out west, or if I went south, they'd come down there. We lived together in Australia, uh, Florida, Whistler, Banff. We've been all over the place. So as that is the foundation, it was only a natural progression that we would go into business together, because who else could we trust more than each other? So I'm sure there's lots of people out there that are either contemplating a family business versus a friendly business, where you bring in something that you've either gone to high school or university with, or it could have been a childhood friend that you reconnected in a business sense, and then you're like, man, maybe we should try this. So whatever the unification is, the key is, at least for us in the beginning, was that everybody had to be pulling the amount of weight that everybody else is pulling. Once there's any inequity in that balance, whether it's a family member or a friend, in business, it becomes very challenging, and problematic would probably be a better word for that. And then it leads to controversy. It leads to things that are so counter to the direction that you are hoping to go in, that you actually end up pulling the ropes in opposite ends instead of focusing on a target that, could allow competitors into your space, or just oversight is lost on certain aspects of the business. And instead of being focused and unified, you're fragmented, and it becomes a lot tougher that way. So I get back to the original question about why we got into the golf business in terms of the leather. As golf pros, had experimented with the golf ball market. So, from, I guess, a very early age, we were kind of born into salesmanship, and always selling ourselves, whether it was trying to sell ski lessons. If we worked in bars at night, you were trying to upsell the person into getting a double shot or a bigger glass of beer. So we kind of learned the craft of upsells, or, self promotion. And so we thought, yeah, let's try to make a product. So this golf ball mark was pretty cool. It was innovative. It was kind of a golf improvement, helped you line up putt. And that was kind of the first introduction that we had to speaking to selling one particular product that was not our own services. And from that, as we tried to grow that business, we saw other opportunities. And it was my brother, Jeff, when he was caddying down in Florida, that he had seen some nice leather head covers coming through. And similar to the story of Ferry Porsche, where he's, the car company, obviously, and the founder of that, he said that he had a challenge finding a car that he, dreamed of. So he just decided to build one.
Build it.
And similar to that, Jeff came home and said, hey, like, I've looked for some head covers. I haven't really found any that I really like. I think we could be able to build some better than anybody else. So from that, we just started back in 2014. had no idea really about leather, didn't know how to sew, and basically ventured out into the world trying. It was a very low bar of entry in terms of we didn't have to buy machines. We could hire other people to make our prototypes. There was ways that we could get cheaper leather, odds and ends here and there. And so we just kind of bootstrapped it. We, I had $1,000 at the time. Jeff had 1,000. So we had $2,000 total to put towards raw materials and paying people utilizing their services. And that's what we started with. And 10 years later, we got a facility in Nova Scotia and a facility in California. So, I mean, it's definitely a dream come true in that sense. When somebody said 10 years ago, you're going to have two facilities, I would have been like, I can't wait to watch this. I'm really curious to see how this all happened.
That's amazing. Like it's a
Yeah.
very classical story. Sometimes it's very hard to believe it even sometimes, because you like, I had $1,000 in my pocket and I just started this business and now it became this huge thing that's incredible. But if we go one step, backwards and again, back to the golf, like what's the golf thing? It was something in your family or something in the neighborhood that, or so where this culture of, being a golfer and also going pro, where it came from.
Yeah. So it all started with our father who learned golf from his father. So it was always three generations basically on any tee box at any given time. So I grew up playing golf with my grandfather and my dad. And now I have a 7-year-old and he plays with my father. And so there's three of us again on the tee box, three generations. And my youngest brother, Alex, he's expecting his first child in August. So that'll be another mini golfer coming out, whether it's a guy or a girl, we don't know yet. It'll be a big surprise. But the point of that is that it was always in our family. And the competitive spirit, though, was driven into us from our father. He's one of the most competitive people you would have ever met. Not in business, though, only in sports. And there was a
Only
big separation there. He always was like coach, a player, sometimes a coach and player, whether it was basketball. I played a lot of baseball. And in those developmental stages when he was coaching us as kids, I mean, it was very intense situations with him.
demanding. Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't like, there was a basketball coach named Bobby Knight. I don't know if you remember him. He used to coach Indiana and he'd throw chairs and it was just an absolute wild man. Dad was like, I'd say one notch below that. He'd never throw stuff, but he might punch the chalkboard. So, but outside of that, he's like the most chill guy. So what we got from that was my takeaway as a kid was that we had to win. And it wasn't winning at all costs, though. And this was one of the big things that I learned from my father was that it'd be better to you know play by the rules and not cheat, as opposed to you know shaving off a card, stroke off your card, or moving the ball, or there's a myriad of ways you can cheat in golf, and that just was never. And that went across playing cards. It went across everything. So having that type of mentality, we brought that into our business and, our pillars kind of when we originally wrote the papers, we care about our product, we care about our customer, and we do what we say, and we have great pride in our product. So they're all principles that kind of came from our dad and from a background of athletics.
It's amazing how sports influence so many things and areas, right? Like sports is always a good base for sales, obviously, right? Sports teams, sports spirit, and how you can also take these practices and basically apply them to business and business practices. It's always great to see that. So you basically you decided to start this brand, right? Dormie Workshop. And can you tell us a little bit about, the early days of, you said that you had a little bit of funds and then you started thinking about what kind of product you want to sell, like what will be so special about it, I know that you're very heavy on personalization and this is something that you lead with and you try to be highly customizable. I saw also different the different options that you have on your website, it's always goes back to customization, especially of crazy like Star Wars, right? And different themes that you're doing there. So kind of, when you're getting into this market, and maybe by the way, in some cases you don't have a very specific strategy and you just play around and you try different things until something sticks. But in your case, I would be happy to understand better. How did you think about it? Like early days, what are we selling? How do we sell it? What do we do? How do we start this thing?
Yeah, I think originally it was the fact that we're all artists in our own kind of different sector. Like Alex was a graffiti artist. Jeff just kind of did random painting where I was like super into painting waves and bikini girls and beach scenes and that kind of stuff. So having that artistic uh, kind of eye was where we were able to look at headcover space and say, okay, well, let's just look at a regional play. So we thought let's do some Nova Scotia based covers first because we want to own our zone. It was always like, and our zone just kept expanding. So on the zone was, let's take care of Atlantic Canada first, and then we'll move laterally and we'll look at Ontario and BC, like just head west. And so we kind of replicated that with different designs that would speak to people from certain areas of the country. And then once that, then it started to get some Instagram messages and emails looking for custom designs where it was like a one-off where they would just say, can you build an airplane head cover? And we would try to figure out a way to, as rudimentary as it might be, there was so little competition that would take that challenge on that we did it because we really enjoyed it. It was a fun challenge. And that was always the main thing I think that kept this business going is that every time we got a new crazy ask, we always thought about it and we're like, that seems impossible. And then we say, yeah, no, we can do it. And then once we committed, then it's like, okay, oh man, now we got to figure this out. So it was like this gigantic video game, except it was real life. Like it was like Minecraft and you're trying to build this perfect little, you know, zone that somebody would come into and go, wow, you built this thing. This is really cool. And from that, it just expanded. So we transposed say, Alex, you wanted to have a head cover that represented a sports team, but we didn't have the license for it, but we were going to use a colorway that would reflect the colors of that team. And there was a
Mhm.
number of your favorite player. We'll put the number on it. We'll put the team colors. And that was enough to satisfy you to not have to pay the full license product because anybody that has the license product wouldn't ever offer that type of service. So it was just kind of like, you can't get it anywhere else. And we're going to be able to get what you want. You're going to pay, a premium for that. But what we saw was that we took so much care in the product and the craftsmanship that when we thought that it was only going to be a one-time sale to Alex, turns out that you've got a putter that now you want to have matching to your driver. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, actually, my father saw my covers. He doesn't like my team. He likes the other guys. And I'm like, okay, well, what are those colors? And all of a sudden we've got these return customers that we never thought we would get more than one cover out of because it just seemed like it was a big expense. People probably are only going to just get the driver and that might be the end of the story. But from our, just looking at our Instagram following and how deep that is and how engaged people are and understanding their buying habits, we're getting probably average spends now of $500-600 of a customer over a 2 to 3 year span, and it can be higher. That would be just like an average, and that's like almost triple what I had ever thought was imaginable.
Mhm.
So the retention and the staying power been able to maintain, and it's because we don't rest on our laurels. We just continually push the bar, and we want to make the most expensive head cover in the world. That was always our goal from day one. The first bar was to sell $1,000 head cover, and that was one of the tasks that I took on because when we set the company up, our stepdad, who was a very wise businessman, and he's not with us anymore, RIP. But Paul Cal's really helped us in the early days. And he just said, look, Todd will do sales and marketing because that's kind of his strength. Jeff, you've got the finance background with your business degree, and you take over production, and you're the visionary. So you look after kind of like the strategy component, and just let Todd do the social media stuff and some other sales ideas. So having that as our foundation, we ran that way for a good 5 or 6 years before we were able to clone and get somebody else to wear the hat to help grow the business, because it's not scalable with just, two of us running at the helm
Yeah.
that way, right?
But that's kind of interesting. Would you say that because you're basically creating a product that's not exactly based, let's take a team, right? You want to see the logo of the team there with the license. When we talk about licensing, it's a big thing. And
Mhm.
you're saying that people were enjoying or were satisfied with getting the glove or the cover just with the colors that kind of reminds you of the team or gives you a kind of a clue that it's part of the team or related to the team, but it's not really merchandise of the team or related directly to the team. And this kind of contradicts what we see in regular stores, right? Because everybody is trying to buy the license. It's all about like Disney and all the other different, I don't know, shows that you see today for kids, especially, right? Kids will always want, the figure. They will always want their heroes on the product, and that what actually sells for them. And then you come and say you don't have to do it in this exact way. The customization, the personal, as far as I understand it, the personal part sometimes is more important to people to feel unique than to get, this standard thing that people are used to get with the logo and you know the nice little label
I,
there.
the one piece that I have left out is that putting a person's name on an item is the real game changer. So, let's just say it was the Toronto Maple Leafs and we're looking at the white and blue colorway. And let's say a classic old captain of the Leafs was Daryl Sittler, 27. Well, there's a NHL Players Association. They would, you'd have to go through them in order to try to use the Sittler name and the number. But if if you just wanted to have Alex on there and your favorite number was 27 and you just want a blue and white, well, that cover is now yours. And that colorway, it just, I don't know, it was just enough to have a person's name on there with their favorite number to sell a whole bunch of them. And so
It's
from
amazing.
that premise, it led us to working with the Leafs. Then from that, I flew down to New York and met with the NHL to get the Leafs license. And then 4 hours later, I had the entire league's license. And so now we've got the NHL license. And these are all like stepping stones along the way of like, you start with something really small and you have no idea where it's going to take you. There's no linear path to this. It really is. And you'll hear from a bunch of different people that have started business that there is never one straight line. Nobody ever just takes a bunch
Yeah.
of cash. You know what? Maybe in the software, the apps or, some space like that, they can just do some type of linear blast. But
No, it just
in
looks like
most entrepreneurship, it's all over the map,
it's
right?
all over the map. It's always all over the map.
And all you're doing is just like we were looking at what is like selling. So we had to be very attentive and extremely like open to what people would critique, what they liked, what they didn't like. And most of it was just positive feedback. And once we found something that was hot, just go right to that. And we just focus on that until it burned out. And then we would start over again. And then another fire might start. We're like, man, sell, push this. And then it will eventually dissolve, or it might transform into another fire over here and it's kind of connected. And that
Yeah.
was how we kind of moved through figuring out how to make a cover. Like we called ourselves the South Park of head covers because I love humor. I thought that was a really big part of our business earlier on was making, it wasn't necessarily gag covers, but it was like if something happened, like today, for example, the tariffs just hit officially for here
Yeah.
in Canada and the US. So there's an official trade war going on. We would have a head cover about that within 24 hours. There'd be a head cover that you could buy.
Yeah. Ah, really?
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
in
So we would
production,
just,
or
no, they're
you already
not.
have a
We
design?
stay away from that topic. No, we're
Okay,
not touching
got
that
it.
with a 10-foot pole.
Got it.
Like
Okay.
the one thing that we definitely paid attention to is politics and business. Horrible idea, unless you are a politician. The fastest
Yeah.
way to draw lines of and ruin fans and ruin followers,
And
and
it marks
it does, yeah, and it puts you in a corner. And as much as you want to make a political statement, it's just, man, let the politicians and everybody else take care of that, because as a growing brand, when you're just fighting for life and trying to survive, you can really sink a ship real quick doing that.
So one of the things that are very interested to me, because I hear it also from other conversations with great brands and merchants, the thing with customized is that you don't really have a SKU, you know what I mean? So when it's customized, it's a usually, not always, secondhand, by the way, same thing, is that it's a one thing, and it's very hard. It's a one product that you created for one specific customer, and it's very hard to scale this way, right? Because you cannot create very easy production lines, and in terms of costs and margin, it's very hard because it's also long and slow. So how do you scale a business when it's fully customized? How did it, like, did you turn some of the customized pieces into just production lines that you can just replicate easily and sell to others? Did you see, because you said that there was some interest from other people to get similar designs. So how did you figure this out?
Yeah, it is very kind of thin ice. First off, what you were describing there, the one-off style productivity is an absolute nightmare, and you cannot make money doing it. It's just a
It's nice at the
unless
beginning
you,
when you're starting, right?
yeah,
It's nice, like, oh, we made a sale, but then when you start to scale, you understand, okay, this is not sustainable. I cannot build a business like
disaster.
that. I need something more. I need something more templated, right? I need something more that's
Yeah.
easier for me to produce.
Yeah, well, so there's a couple things, because we have D2C where you can come on and buy a one-off cover. Then we have our B2B, which we've tried to replicate. So we'll go into a business and say, if it's a pro shop, let's say, for example, St. Andrews, the oldest course on the planet. Well, we're
Mhm.
going to highlight whatever key thing is. So the most recognized bridge in golf is the Swilcombe Bridge on the 18th hole at St. Andrews. And we've taken that photo, and if there was a guy named Peter Andrews and he had this famous bridge and he wanted to have a head cover that showcased his bridge, that's what we did. Except now we actually have the ability to scale this and just, make them in batches of 24. And it's like, how fast can you sell these things? And so we've transposed the individual purchase, and the background of how we listen and understand what the customer wants for your one-off, that that colorway and the number and your name on it. Well, we do the same process with pros at pro shops, and we try to find out what's the standout feature in your club. Is there a cultural piece that you want to highlight? What's the colorways? And all of a sudden you start to see, okay, without sharing pictures, we kind of have a story. And from that, our design team will build a head cover to see if we can pair up with that story. But to go back to one of your earlier questions about doing one-off designs, we did, because if somebody says, build us an airplane head cover, that's sometimes that's all they say. Like, these people are not artistic. That's why they came to us. And so even if they are artistic and they hand sketch something, we still have to have control over the final design, because they have no idea of the specifications, and like, you can only modify, you've only got this much space to work with. And the vision that they have, they want wings that are 6 feet wide.
It's
And
a little bit
so
like
in the
tattoos,
end,
right? It's like
yeah,
tattoo
yeah,
art, right? It's very
that's
similar.
about it. Like, you're working on a really small space. So that artwork, we look at that as ours, not as the customer's. And so there is we debated this for a long time in the beginning. Sometimes we would say to the customer, hey, we're really happy with the way this cover came out. We're going to waive your design fee, that's okay that we're going to use this cover, but in a slightly different version. And 9 times out of 10, you know what? I don't think we've ever had anybody ever say, no, like, that's not fair, because they were like, no, I've got my one off. Like, you guys are going to tweak it and it's not going to be identical. No, go ahead. But we cared about the customer. And so that customer, there's full transparency. We weren't hiding anything. And they're like, it's fair. We were offering to even, give back some cash, because we knew that we were going to, in the long sustainability for our brand, we have to give a little bit of cash back just to make sure that the customer is okay with it. And then down the line, we're going to make it back 10x and everybody wins. And then you can grow the brand. So if you fast forward to where we are now, we actually shut off for the first time ever, because of production challenges, we had no intake for one-off customs. So
Really?
we just said there is no custom covers until a certain time was met, when we knew that we could certainly like turn artwork around in a timely fashion, but also produce the product in a timely fashion. So now we are doing intakes of 75 customers at a time. Once we hit that 75, we close it off. We work through that 75, and then we're going to open up the intake again. And and that process is evolving. It's very fluid, because some people might want to have a $2,000 or $3,000 cover versus somebody that only needs a $300 cover. So it's very unpredictable, but we're learning more about what we need to do to make the business profitable, because we work for charity for many, many, many years. And when I
Yeah.
say charity, I mean just like breaking even, where a customer is getting a very good value.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, we're like, well, you know what? We're learning the whole time, and we're reinvesting, and it's just a learning process. And we were never greedy. We never sped the process up. It was just a slow, incremental, dragging all the people that we've worked with along with us. And we've been able to maintain a lot of great, I'd say our retention with customers is well over 80%. If somebody gets 80% of the time they'll be back. It might even be higher.
Amazing. And they're coming back for themselves or for their family members, friends?
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes for the business, like, you never know who you're working with. And that's one of the things I think is really important to realize as a business owner, that some of these people, they may have really quirky requests, but they might be, she might be a CEO of a business that has a thriving gifting opportunity or a tournament that they run. And if you treat them right and they have a great experience, and maybe we messed up, but if we own that mess up and we're like, look, we apologize and we're gonna make this right, they'll come back, because they know, we're trustworthy and that we care about the customer. And if you do that, even if you fail, you're probably going to succeed.
Yeah, definitely. I fully agree with that. You never know who's the customer in front of you. And even if you know, it doesn't matter.
No.
Your identity and your brand, that's the most important thing. And kind of, we're coming here to the end, and I wanted to ask you one question that is very important to our audience and usually very interesting. So, especially in your case, when we're talking about customized, or at least the beginning, more customized oriented business with customized products, how did you figure out your acquisition versus growth within the session of the buyer? Because it sounds like it's not like shampoos or I don't know supplements or something like that that people need basically to come and buy, I don't know, every month or two or three. Probably some, and you said that your retention is amazing, and I'm curious to understand in terms of acquisition cost, which is a big challenge for any brand out there, any business owner, bringing people inside, especially with paid acquisition, and then you need to get the ROI. And how do you see it from your business perspective? Like the acquisition versus being able to maximize the buying power within the session and maybe offering, like, can you sell two covers to one person? Can you sell maybe other accessories? How did you expand? This is something that was a big deal for you to expand the offering to get your AOV higher.
Yeah. I mean, the acquisition of customers is definitely a huge challenge. And as a bootstrapping guerrilla marketing, that was our specialty and our social media. I think we looked at Canadian golf companies, and I think the closest one to us is at 30,000, under 30,000. We're getting up towards around 64,000 followers, and in Instagram was where we found some really nice Easter eggs of surprises where we could get customers at next to nothing other than sweat equity. So if you're looking at trying to put a value on that, well, in our early days, we we spent absolutely $0 on getting customers. It was
Amazing.
all about, yeah, it was all connecting with the customers so that they understood that here's our product, this is our background, and we think this is a product that really could work for you. Just give us a chance. And like I know early days, I would go in and let's say in the algorithm, you were a golfer and you popped up. If you had an open account, I would go in and I would scroll through your photos until I found where your golf bag was. Then I would zoom in, look at the golf bag, see what the head covers are. So if you didn't have any on, then I was like, that's like number one guy right there. Because this is easy. He doesn't even have head covers. And they could also be all taken off because you didn't want to lose any. So that there was that kind of double-edged sword there. But I would go in and let's just say they were all beaten up and they were old head covers and they might have been licensed head covers. I would say, hey, it looks like you're due for a refresher on your head covers. Why don't you come check us out at Dormie Workshop? And just a simple little thing like that. And that little query would lead the person to come look at us. And then sometimes they'd send us a DM and they go, well, what are you talking about? Like, what do you guys have to offer? And then the conversation starts. And that's where the salesmanship comes in. But the cost of that was only my time. And in the meantime, my brother is back there trying to figure out the administrative, chasing down accounts receivable, building the website. We did all the photography. We use WordPress as our first website. We're on Shopify now, but we're looking because of our duality. Our SEOs went way down. So when you have two websites for Shopify, it doesn't work. So we're actually leaving Shopify and having to build a custom. And so I guess the point is, and you can just hear like all the way through, we're never, oh, we got a website, that's done. Now what? It's always the IT now in this environment. You basically have to hire somebody on IT because it's continually evolving. And for us, like I'm headed to Hanover for AI conference, and the AI, we know that there's bottlenecks in our business that's going to help us become more efficient, more profitable. And when it comes to customer acquisition, we really believe that AI is going to help us now I wouldn't say a mature company, even though we're 10 years in. I still think we're very unknown in the US, super unknown worldwide, pretty well known in Canada, but we know that Canada has a limited amount of space, just understanding the market. So how do we get to Korea? How do we do this? Well, customer acquisition gets super expensive when you start to look, broad, when you really look at the global scale. And we're prepared to invest heavily in ways to make customer acquisition more efficient. But at the same time, the grassroots of how we got to where we are, which is connecting with the person on the other end, the consumer, that's still number one. So if you can be authentic, which was just me as an owner, randomly shooting people messages on their
One
Instagram,
by one.
commenting on how bad their head covers look and why we can make them look better and feel better and play better. That's how it started. And if you can stay true to that core, just like raw green, like I want to make you our customer. And here's why. If you can stay true to that, even 10 years later, you're going to be in good shape. And people can throw percentages and numbers and break it down to a dollar. I really still think it's the passion of the brand and the pursuit of finding customers in organic ways and authentic ways, whether that's at trade shows that are direct facing, like the Adidas trade show. We don't do many of those, but just because of the nature of our product, but we do a lot of tournaments and we sponsor a lot of different associations. So we connect with the consumer in other ways that aren't attributed to, it's still a customer acquisition, but it's a very, very roundabout way, but it's also a very personal way to meet and greet people. And in those transactions of the one-on-one is where we've always punched outside our weight class.
Got it. And what about optimizing the session itself? Like once they're already in, is this something of a focus to you, or you find it like a less important thing to do? Like,
No,
is it only about
that
acquisition or also about increasing the size of each cart per customer?
well, yeah, the cart is definitely a big issue with us, because we're trying to expand our product line. One of the things that I like, I've been to these websites and they do a great job. If I go to, I really like rainbow flip flops, the leather flip flops. I've worn them for decades, and if I go to their website or a Vans shoe, they'll always like throw something at you that it's kind of like, you're going to drop $100 on some flip flops, then you probably want a pair of board shorts. It's like, dang. And you might want to have a t-shirt for after your surf session. And next thing you know, you're up to $200. And then it's like, well, if you spend over 250, you're going to get free shipping. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to leave that. Whatever they just organically threw into my shopping cart through their AI suggested shopping, they're going to get me to go to that $50 thing because I want to get the free shipping. So I
Yeah.
just went from one pair of flip flops to about 6 items in a matter of 5 minutes. And that's not even playing fair. It's just, I mean, it's so genius. And we're trying to get to there where, because we know people would buy more in terms of hats and t-shirts and hoodies. But right now our bandwidth and our focus is staying true to our cause, which is we're trying to get to a 6 to 8 week lead time on our business to business portal. And then our D2C, we're re-strategizing so that if you look at Amazon, everybody now thinks that you just click a button, stuff's just going to automatically appear out of nowhere in 24 hours. And if it's not 24 hours, you're writing somebody and they're angry. Well, when we first started, when you bought something on the website, we used to say it's 4 weeks delivery. So you'd have to wait 4 weeks because they knew that it was made to order. And we realize now in this day and age that we have to be ahead of that. We have to have stock. And once we run out of stock, let's, just say sold out. And then, man, if it takes 2 weeks to build the stock back up, that's okay. The customer is going to realize that, yeah, it's out of stock and it'll eventually come back. I don't know when, but the ability to buy something and have it shipped in 2 to 3 days, that's our goal right now. Our whole business is focused on, it's more timing. So that the customer, once we have that customer and they bought their first Dormie product and they want to come back for more, it's not, we do want to optimize the website to be able to get that, the shake and the fries with your hamburger. Right now, we want to get you that hamburger so that when you come through the drive-through, you can
Still
get it
work.
in under a minute, as opposed to waiting in the parking lot for a week while we cook your, all the food, all the stuff you got to do
Yeah.
to make a hamburger and fries from scratch.
It's all about speed at the end and meeting customer expectations. It feels like everything becomes faster and faster, and people don't have the patience. So
That's what it seems.
that
Yeah, that's what I would say we've learned.
I agree with you. That's a more basic thing. Once you have the speed,
Mm.
you can add everything on top of the speed, and it will probably work as long as you keep the speed at the right pace.
Yeah, and like for us, I think there's when you look at a Louis Vuitton, not that we're at the Louis Vuitton in terms of price or high end quality, but in the golf space, where people would say, oh, that they're like the Louis Vuitton headcover because the materials that we use, the thread that we use, it's all the most expensive, built to last. It's the best Italian leather you can buy. And with that expectation, people know that does take time. So they do look at our product differently than they do a synthetic head cover or stuff that's made overseas. That the guys they'll get a shipment of head covers that are 1,000 of these things that cost $4 to make, and with unfair, unethical labor practices, and people know, yeah, it's a throwaway cover. I'll spend $40 and I'll probably get it in 2 days. With our product, they understand that this is a domestically made, handcrafted piece of art, and they're they're a little bit more patient. So we have a little bit of room to breathe there. But I still think we have to be faster and more efficient. And in terms of customer acquisition, word of mouth is still king. And the amount of referrals that we've had, that's the best form. Those third-party referrals, you can't put a price on that
You
stuff.
can't beat it. You can't beat it.
It's
I agree with
impossible.
you.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely. All right, Todd. Thanks a lot for coming here and sharing the story with us. It's incredible to see how three brothers build a business with $2,000 in their pockets, and now they have two facilities. So that's totally inspiring, and I'm sure that you will get some comments about this from people. So thanks a lot again, and for sharing the story and coming to D2C breakdowns. And that's it. Great to see your growth.
Yeah,
and maybe think
Thank you,
again
Alex.
about Shopify. I mean, we like Shopify, but if it doesn't work for you, try your own way.
Yeah, some of what those SEOs, man, we just dropped. So we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. All right, Todd. Thank you, everybody, and see you on the next one.
All right.
Bye bye.
Thank you, man.